it's like what Alice Munro said, that, when she used to write stories, she didn't know she was writing stories about women. It just happened.
Yeah.
So even for me, it's not like I set out to tell these stories. It comes from your experiences. It comes from seeing your mothers, your grandmothers.
Welcome to The Best Parts, the show where we get into the heads of the characters we love by speaking with the people who brought them to life. Full disclosure, I've known Arpita Chatterjee for more than 2 decades. She's one of the most misleading women you will ever meet because she looks and she sounds like a scrappy, scatty teenager, and that is just her mask of doofus. She's organized protests in public. She supports individuals in private. She's raising a fantastic young teen. She's a domestic goddess, and now she's a Filmfare-nominated screenwriter.
शैलजा ने बताया मुझे कि आप लोग बचपन के दोस्त हैं।
बचपन में तो सभी दोस्त होते थे।
Watching the three of us, her film made me ache for more stories like these. They're deep, nuanced, gentle, and rich in a way that I dare say is invisible to the mainstream that runs this industry. And yet something has turned, and Three of Us has made it to theatres and to Netflix. Everyone has loved it, and the curse of my love has lifted. Welcome to The Best Parts. I'm so glad you're here. It's about time.
आप चाय और लेंगे?
ये क्या आप तुम लगा रखा है? स्कूल में तो तू बोलते थे।
स्कूल पिछले जन्म की बात लगती है अब तो कभी-कभी।
I need to start by asking you, where did the story come from?
So, first of all, thank you for the introduction. It was like, I'm going to frame it and put it up on my wall. So basically, this answer is a bit complex because the origin of the story was a conversation that my director Avinash and me had. And we both had come out of these experiences where we were doing a lot of work which was based on what other people wanted. So we were very cognizant that we wanted to tell a story which was reflecting what we wanted to see, what represented us.
Yeah.
And I didn't know him before. So I met him and we just started talking. And both of us landed up in a place where we wanted to explore a story about memories and what it means to us. And basically, there is a personal story in this, which I've not shared before. I have an experience of somebody who I knew very well when I was 16. And it was a space, like as a 16-year-old, you don't have the pressures of life. Like a 16-year-old woman is a girl, is very different from a 50-year-old woman, right? Who has the roles of mother, wife, caregiver, who's constantly, burdened by all of these things. So I really wanted to tell the story about a woman who had forgotten her version of herself without all of this. And so I told Avinash this, and he was very keen on adding a layer of dementia because I think his mother suffered from it.
Okay.
So then after our conversation, I went back and did a lot of research on dementia. And some very interesting things emerged. Is that, first of all, women, twice as much women suffer from dementia than men. And this is a very understudied kind of framework. And I started exploring, why does that happen? Now, this is my own conclusion because there's no evidence to point to that. Is one of the reasons that cause dementia is trauma. Yeah. And trauma that happened 40 years ago can change your neural pathways and make you more vulnerable to dementia at a later stage.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing was that when I started writing it, I just knew the story. Like, after you called me, I went back and I read the first version of the story. And I realized that I just knew this film from the get-go. Like, it's never happened before, and I hope it happens again. I don't know. But it's very rare that you know a story so intuitively, you know.
It
So
shows.
that was
It shows. I think that's why everyone has reacted like that, because it comes straight. It hits you straight in the heart or somewhere. Now she's going back and she's revisiting this old love, this alternate life, which she's already lost once. She feels she's lost it and she's getting ready to lose it again. So does this make the visit even more difficult? Because this time when she's leaving, she knows she won't come back, even maybe in her mind.
So you know what, the way I looked, I didn't want the story to be heavy because I had done a whole bunch of writing which was very dark, and I wanted to examine this story with a little bit of gentleness and kindness. And the way I looked at it was that if she had not discovered she had dementia, would she have gone back?
Yeah.
Would her husband go with her? So in a way, things happen in life which move the pieces around. So the way I looked at it, that every part of your journey opens up a portal which you either go down or you don't. And her discovery that she was getting dementia made her long to remember who she was in the past, which maybe she wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So that's the lens, which is why you don't feel so heavy about it, because there's a joyful aspect to her connecting with her past version, because that was the version before life took over, you know?
Yeah. In the film, she seems quite tentative or reticent in most interactions. And, somebody says something and she seems to think once or twice and she goes quiet. And she doesn't even want to fill any of the awkward silences, even if they're because of her. And I want to know, where did this come from? Is it, is it because you're saying that, she's spent years as a counselor in a divorce court? Or is this some kind of new fear? There is a tentativeness to her character. Or was that the directors telling her, like, this is how you play it? Where did that come from?
So I think it would be a combination of choices made by how the actor, Shefali, and how the director, Avinash, also saw the character. But the way I imagined it is that when you have a new reality, you're like a baby, right?
Yeah.
You don't know. So the way I imagined it was that it was like a rebirth with fear. Like you don't know what there's going to be. So the hesitation and the nerves comes from there,
Yeah,
So-
it's like they say, they say that about motherhood. It's like opening a room.
Yeah.
So this is like a room of the new shelter.
So she's like, even though she's such an accomplished woman, it's like she's new to her new reality, She's looking at everything with a fresh pair of eyes. So that's where her nerves come from.
I want to talk about her marriage because it's a beautiful thing that you've created. And, let's start talking about Dipankar, our favorite. So firstly, he's not at all typical in any way. He's so gentle, but he's also very secure. And, for example, in that scene early on when he tells her there's no salt on the poha, okay?
नमक दे दो थोड़ा।
Now, we have seen 100 scenes like this where the man of the house is telling the woman of the house that there's something wrong with the food. But here he's almost apologetic because he knows that, she might have forgotten. And he's super attentive. Like, for example, when he makes cocktails and he brings it to the girls in the kitchen. There's something really lovely about him. So, first question is like, who is this guy? Who have you based him on? And can we set up like a training camp?
I'm trying it on my son. It's really hard with like animal and stuff going around. It's a bit difficult, but yeah. So this is an interesting question because I have experienced very few men who are like that. My husband himself is quite gentle, though I don't think it's a choice really because he does sometimes not understand what part is conditioning and he struggles with it. So a little bit of him was modeled on my husband Sagar. But it's also a lot to do with the director and how he want the lens on which he handled these characters, because sometimes you put something down on paper and then filmmaking is a collaborative process. Writing is just the first part of it. It's the way my director handled it. I feel a lot of credit goes to him
So
because
is he like that?
he does have a lot, though ironically he does very strong shows with a lot of masculinity, but he does have this side and I have to, and it was incredible because on this film my collaborators were all men, like the Omkar, Avinash, Varun and Shoaib, and it was so lucky that they all brought so much gentleness to each step that the final product is actually a testimony to the fact that gentleness is not just the domain of women. It is not on us to tell these stories, So I think it was just really lucky that I got to collaborate with these, and that nuance just kept getting stronger.
Yeah, because it's really, really beautiful. Like, for example, on that first evening in Vengurla, she's cleaning the fish for him and then he starts singing and then she takes the phone out to record him.
एक मिनट
सुरमई शाम जिस तरह
What I found, it's like a very telling moment, like it's like a snapshot, of the everyday joys of a long marriage. Because, we're really now kind of used to seeing content about the dissatisfaction in relationships and so much statement of these are my individual needs. And and then everyone wants these grand gestures or grand statements of love and whatever. And I want to know from you, what do you think are, the signs of a good long-term marriage?
So, Genesia, this is very interesting because you mentioned individuality, and I've been married for 20 years, okay? I have gone through different phases of disappointment and reinvented my own position on marriages. And today, maybe it'll be different 20 years later, I don't know, I think individuality is a very important part of marriage because it is two individuals who make the marriage. And as much as it is a function of two people, marriage is about accepting the other.
Yeah.
And I feel a successful marriage is when two people can accept that there are two individuals and respect that person. This is what I believe right now. And this is what I at least tried to do within this story.
Yeah.
Is as much as you're together, you also respect the other person's individuality and understand that there are parts of that person you can't access. And you get comfortable with that,
Yeah, getting comfortable with that part. I think, that's because it's quite scary when you're younger. It's quite scary to think, I don't know everything about this person, and that is definitely, I do find the whole film being very positive about marriage, by the way, and we'll come to that later. Like, for example, like Dipankar, he's agreed, like you said, like he has no access to this part of her, quite literally. He's agreed to accompany his wife on a journey back to her childhood. And, in Indian marriages, or maybe all marriages actually, there tends to be an expectation that the woman cuts ties with her past. In some cases, they change their names, their first names as well. So it's the thing that now you are of this household, you are no longer of that household. And I want to know, when Dipankar decides to accompany her, is it a sign of maturity, or he has no idea actually what's going to happen? He's just being supportive at that time.
So actually, he has no idea. So he's shocked. Like through the journey, you will see most of the frames have the three people, and that's how I wrote it. Is that he is witnessing this version of his wife that he didn't know. He didn't know she could dance. He didn't know she was brave. He didn't know anything about her. And for him, it's not like he was totally comfortable with it.
Yeah.
He was really uncomfortable with what he was discovering, and he was upset that he didn't know about it. But this is the part where I wanted to talk about how the identity of a woman who's married becomes so defined by the roles she's playing. But she has definitely been somebody else before, and how many people explore that version of their mothers, their wives. Like, ask her, what were your dreams? Like, Dipankar didn't even know that Shefali could dance, and she
Yeah.
was such an accomplished dancer. So it's also a portal to show that a wife and a mother have been many different versions and people. Like, this is something which I am so fascinated by. The identity of women and how we get constructed by so many different things,
Yeah.
and how little we explore who we actually are as people. And thematically, it's so strange. Like, I keep coming back to the same theme in every story I'm doing, and I'm like, this is such an important theme. And it's like what Alice Munro said, that when she used to write stories, she didn't know she was writing stories about women. It just happened.
Yeah.
So even for me, it's not like I set out to tell these stories. It comes from your experiences. It comes from seeing your mothers, your grandmothers. Like, my grandmother passed away 2 months ago, and I didn't know that she used to ride a cycle to college. This puts such a different spin on her, right?
Yeah.
So my image of her changed completely.
Yeah, like similarly, like 2 or 3 months before my mom died, she told me that these American colleges came to school and her school, and they did these aptitude tests, and she had a scholarship to go to the US. Okay.
Wow.
And this was in the 60s or whatever. And she said no because she couldn't imagine leaving. And I was like, wow. Like, and then she died. And I was like, oh, what else did you not tell me? Like, what the hell? So this is the thing, you're right. You see a woman in their present state and you just think that is it. This is who they are. They were never anything else. They were never a different shape, size, mentally or physically. It's so weird.
Yeah, and they're just, like
just
you
came
said,
fully formed.
Yeah, that they are just reborn.
Yeah.
They change their name and they have a whole different identity, but they existed before that, right?
Yeah.
And this to me was an interesting lens to unpack a woman.
And it can be
who-
disconcerting also for other people to watch. Okay. So speaking of like Dipankar now getting into a space where he is going to be facing his discomfort. There's this saying, love and a cough can't be hidden. So, you can see that he's not saying anything, but then he's trying to figure out the status quo. And he asks if Gauri and Parshuram met in school. And that's a very telling thing. He was like, oh, you guys met in school? Like, what was going on? This sounds terrible. Anyway. And he's already heard Pradip's name a couple of times. He was like, oh yeah, Pradip Kamath and Pradip Kamath again. But still, he's being gentle. He's being tentative. It's not typical. And he has no territorial sense. Like, I don't even know if he's ever been. And so he's encountering these feelings also for the first time. Like, forget like looking at the woman as somebody else. Is this the first time he's feeling a little jealousy or a little insecurity?
I think so. These are very alien feelings to Dipankar because, this is the thing. A man, a husband, has a sort of ownership over his wife. Yeah. That I'm the person who's brought her joy and happiness. And then suddenly he's experiencing all these people he didn't even know about. And she's so happy to be with them. So he's a little bit confused.
Yeah.
And there is some sense of, like, it's a bit territorial, but he can't also
he can't go
get into this.
he can't be territorial
So if
now.
you see, he's always 2 steps behind, but he's always observing and feeling a little bit like that's how I constructed the story, which is why it's called Three of Us,
3 is a crowd. Yeah, and Swanan plays it beautifully. He's just like, he's like his face is like there's a million things going on. He's so subtle, it's brilliant. So because like the first meeting with the 3 of them, okay, it's super awkward, okay? And, and Dipankar is trying to make it easy. Like he was, like, Shelja doesn't care, I've realized, about whether it's awkward or not. I have like a sister like that.
कब से है आप यहाँ?
मैं 12 साल हो गए सर इसी बैंक में। और आप क्या करते हैं?
सोशल सिक्योरिटी एजेंट हूँ.
You've created a character who is like so intuitive. And I go back to saying, like, why bother making that kind of fiction and raising the standards for all of us? Now we're going to expect this from everybody.
We should.
It's like,
Why?
did other men react when, and they say, like, rubbish, like, don't expect me to be like this. How dare you?
I mean, I just, so I have a son, as you pointed out, and I don't know why we have to always show the worst of human beings.
Yeah.
Like, I really wanted to explore the best versions of what we can be for each other and ourselves.
Yeah, because intuition,
And-
it's always like, it's female intuition. You know what I mean? But Dipankar is super intuitive. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
But there's Sarika, who's another level of intuitive. So that's what I mean. Like, it was playing with the characters and finding the best in them, as opposed to, in so much of the stories we tell, we tend to tell the stories of darkness
Yeah, oh yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And
The
I was-
algorithm rewards you for being
Yeah.
a negative SOB. Yeah.
So I really wanted to tell the story of people who are trying to be the best versions in a very difficult situation.
Wow.
And that was a choice.
Wow.
Like, Dipankar could have been a much darker version.
Yeah.
But, and even Sarika, like, I feel like people don't talk about her enough.
We will.
I mean, to me, Sarika is actually the most special character in the whole film.
She is. So Pradip, he's also as gentle as Dipankar. So Shailaja obviously has a type. And, he's honest and he's already told his wife about Shailaja. So when he says he's going to hang out with her, she isn't like that typical, like, oh, you do what makes you happy, baby.
जाना चाहिए तुम्हें सब बताना लेकिन मुझे और रिश्वत भी देनी पड़ेगी.
And so this is a very mature, secure marriage. And would you say, like, this is a normal reaction? Because this is some city girl coming to see your husband to relive the good times. It's like, why is she not on edge? It's like, it's amazing.
So, okay, so this, I'm going to give a really complicated answer to
No,
this.
go for it.
So, I have done a lot of reading on Alan D. Botton, okay, because, I mean, marriages and love is so complex in relationships. And there was something which really stuck with me for a really long time, is that, when two people get together, there is no way that one person can satisfy every part of you. Okay. Now, the inspiration for Sarika was that thought, is that she is the kind of person who's very secure in her relationship with Pradip. She knows that they have something special. And also, I was trying to show that there's the notion that small town people are petty or they don't understand, but they have an intuitive, emotional understanding. And Sarika represents that. Yeah. And she knows that, Pradip used to write poetry because she's very proud of his poems. She shows it to everybody. And he stopped writing poetry. And for her, when he starts writing, and this is a very difficult thing for a woman to accept, that, my husband's muse is somebody else.
Yeah.
But she also has the security and maturity not to be threatened by it. And she's very safe in her world.
Yeah.
And she allows him, in a way, to access that part of himself. And this was a very important character for me because in my mind, like you correctly said, I don't know about you, but I want to be that person where I am secure that this is my space, but we can grow and find other things that feed us, which doesn't threaten my partner. Yeah. So this was that attempt. It's not easy to be her, but she does it with such grace and dignity.
She
that
really does. It's annoying.
Yeah.
Again, an unrealistic standard, I would say.
Everybody's unrealistic.
But I'm saying that, isn't it weird then in this context that, Shalja hasn't told Dipankar about Pradip, okay? And so what does it say about the two marriages, if you want to compare the two marriages? Like, also, so that's the first question. Second question is there like a statute of time limit on what to tell your husband about your past?
See, from my point of view, each marriage is different. Like in Shailja and Dipankar's marriage, they had to deal with a lot of stuff from very early on. It's all built in there, but it's not on the nose.
Yeah.
And they were just dealing with problems and life and domesticity and child. So they didn't really have the opportunity to talk about. And it's Bombay, everything's rushed. You're just rushing around all the time. So yeah, they didn't get a chance to connect at that deeper level. And the beauty in the story is when she finds out about dementia is when he does connect with her.
Yeah.
So there was a interesting
It's like an impetus at that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is how I connect with you.
So
as you-
even when she was supposed to be lost, he found her.
Yeah.
He
That's
found
a beautiful
that
line.
part of her.
Yeah.
And for me, Pradip and Sarika live in a much slower pace of life. They live in a small town. They have a small garden. He's a poet. He writes. And they share more,
Yeah.
So it was also a statement of where they came from and the milieu in which they belonged.
Okay,
Like,
fair.
city life is so hurried
Yeah.
that I'm sure you know, like you don't have
wouldn't
like that to-do shut up. The to-do list was for me the perfect place to start
that's
because
true.
that
That is- yeah.
is our lives.
That is true.
Like before I came here, I made 5 to-do lists. I told my son what to do, my husband what to do, my kid what to do. And where do you have the time to delve into your like soul?
Now, with Pradip, okay, the first time they're alone, you see a totally different side of Shelter, okay? She's relaxed. Physically, she relaxes, she loosens up. There's an ease to their conversation. They're teasing, there's a jokiness that isn't there in either marriage, by the way. And is it that they're a little bit more compatible, or is it just that for that moment, they're back to school and they've reverted to their younger selves and there's just that ease of being young again with somebody who knew you when you were young?
So this is a really interesting question because when I was writing this, I told you, right, it came from a personal space that there was somebody who was very close to me. And then we didn't meet, and I was imagining what it would be like. And I imagined that we would actually go back in time. I don't know if this is how it happens, but that's how I imagined it. That you connect from the space you left off.
Yeah.
So then you become that person.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what I played it as.
Yeah,
So she's suddenly this shy, this little.
It's very cute.
So that.
Because they have a lot of chemistry. You can see it.
Yeah,
It's
but
just,
that's their chemistry from when they were
It's
15.
an amber, yeah.
Yeah, not. So
Not
you
now,
went
yeah.
back in time.
So you just
right?
feel younger and you feel like the
Because
person
that's-
you used to be.
That's the interesting thing is that your memory is locked in that person as a 16-year-old, right? She doesn't know him as a 50-year-old. Or
Yeah.
they don't know each other as that version. They know each other as the earlier versions, right? So that's who they're connecting
And those
to.
like 20, 30 years of trauma hasn't happened at that moment.
Exactly.
It's just
So
like
it's in a
wiped.
way you've gone back, and that's the version that she went to connect with. And it's through Pradip's, like our versions are locked in each other, right?
Yeah.
Like Pradip, he unlocks that for her. And the interesting thing which I wanted to do is that her journey to herself actually unlocks his 16-year-old side.
Yeah.
Because
That's- you see
he
him loosen up a bit.
accesses
Yeah.
that version and starts writing poetry, right? So it's how it's like people going on a journey but also helping each other find
each other. I like that. I like what you said when like our versions are locked up with other people and we need them to like unlock. It's quite something. Because Pradip also has had a terrible time. Like he has reason to, but he has no daddy issues, though his father abandoned him. And all his daddy issues, they've manifested as like a mistrust of men, which he says. And fair, to be honest. And he mostly has friendships with women, which is also the same as us. And, but when he says that Dipankar is someone to be trusted, I want to know what he's saying to Shailja. Like, do you think it's important for Shailja to hear Pradip say something nice about her husband? Because also, frankly, it's like, when your husband has some hot ex and she says, hey, man, like, your wife has such a good mother. It's like, it's like, please. So you can see, like, anyway, I don't have the requisite maturity for all of this movie. But, I want to know, like, when Shailja hears Pradip say something nice about Dipankar, does she need to hear it? Does she need his It's not even approval. Does she need to hear it? Where did that scene come from?
So basically, in a way, the story is about the three of them, right? So it was about Pradip and Shailja connecting.
Yeah.
But in a way now Dipankar is a part of Shailja. You see,
Okay.
how it's a part of who she is as a person. And it was important to have Pradip and Dipankar connect with each other because it's almost like organically it would make sense, because when you love somebody, and they both do in their own ways,
Yeah.
it's a bond, right?
Yeah.
And that's the space it actually came from. Like you care about this person, and I mean, it usually doesn't work like that, but because there's a lot of insecurities and jealousies. But in this case, despite all of that,
Yeah.
we wanted to show how these two people really bonded. And Pradeep says that. He says, I normally don't get along with men,
Yeah.
but I like you because Shailja likes you. So there's a trust in
Yeah,
that,
that's beautiful.
right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like it's a statement, it's a further stating of their bond. So, okay, let's talk about the location in the film, all right? Because it's very much a character in the film, and it feels a little stuck in time itself. It's almost metaphorical. And why did you choose Vinkurla?
Okay, this was not at all me.
Okay.
This was my director. He comes from the Konkan belt, and he knows this area so well. And it's like, even when I was writing the story, he was sending me visual references. Like, we had photos of the coastline, of the temples. That's just all him.
Oh, brilliant.
And Omkar, who came in and wrote the second pass on the film, he is also from there. So that's why
That's
the
why there's
milieu is so strong, because, that's where the story unfolds. And Avinash is just the most spectacular visual storyteller one can have.
Yeah.
Like,
It
that's
feels it. You feel like you're there.
like
It's
we
really it's
knew
immersive.
the
Yeah.
visual landscape while even we were conceptualizing the story.
It's
It
a
was
beautiful
incredible.
choice. It's perfect, because also there is a difference between the folk who remain in their hometowns and those who move away, and each set looking at each other will always feel like a lens into a different life that you could have had. For example, like Gauri married Parshuram, she moves from her house to his house. But his house is the house he's probably been born in. It's not like us people who just keep moving around from place to place. And I'm always interested in the way, identities play out as a result of when you move for love or for work. Your identity starts having to morph to accept your new surroundings. And Shailaja was only there for a few years, but this is where she became Shailaja. This is her origin story,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, again, it's just like a thematic question. You've moved, and what is better, to stay where your roots are or to leave? A little bit of that discomfort does develop you as a person, but what does it do to yourself and your identity when you are from different places and different? You don't have one home.
I know what you're saying.
Your son's home is here, and your ancestral home is in Calcutta. But what does it do to your identity?
So, this is a really interesting question, because I feel that different identities, it's like choosing. Like, one thing is better than the other. Like, I don't think in binaries in that way. But each one, like, for people who stay rooted in a place, which is like Shailja's friends, Parshuram and Gauri, they have evolved in a certain way. They're very comfortable with who they are.
Yeah.
And
They have no FOMO for another life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not.
Nothing.
They live a certain kind of life, and
Yeah.
they're very happy. And people who move, like me, I have evolved to be a beast who lives in two worlds. And there's a beauty in that, because there is a lens in which I look. I have nostalgia. These things are different things that add to my individuality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're different
But
beasts.
it comes from a sense of there is also a discomfort. There's somewhere deep down. There's always an edge. It's not
you're
a bad
looking
thing.
for a place to belong.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Like,
Yeah.
I feel that people who haven't moved, they just have a sense of belonging because they haven't experienced something else. But when you've spent a big part of your life in a particular place and then you move somewhere else, you look for that sense of belonging. But Genesia, I have to tell you, I believe that you can never recreate that because
Yeah.
it's like your parents. You will never find that comfort ever again, you know? Like psychologically, everybody keeps looking for that, but you won't ever find it. It's the same thing. And you
You're
learn to
absolutely right.
live with it and you learn to
It's a
use
moment
it.
in time rather than a place.
Exactly.
मैं अपने बचपन के घर आई हूँ, खुश तो होंगी ना। इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि मैं तुम्हारे साथ खुश नहीं थी,
तो फिर मुझे याद क्यों नहीं है?
क्योंकि यही हमारी आदत है दीपांकर। सीधा साधा जीवन हमें याद नहीं रहता और गुजरते वक्त के साथ हम भूल जाते हैं, बदल जाते हैं।
क्या बदला है? मैं तो बिल्कुल वैसा का वैसा हूँ।
You know, when Dipankar asks Shailja, have you ever been this happy with me? Okay. He's almost unconscious of that unfair lens that we put on childhood versus adulthood, which is what you just said. And, you know, all our relationships and our experiences, like, say, even with music and with art and everything feels very fresh. And, you know, so, yeah, I think I'm just paraphrasing what you just said. Like, that moment in time can't be recreated. And that is the piece you have to make with it, even with your partner or with your children or whatever it is. Because your first love can also be, your first love is a moment of discovery as well.
Yeah, which you can't ever find again, right? So then if your husband's to be your first love, then you would have to get married when you were like 15 or 16. That doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So I want to say something here about Dipankar. I think Dipankar's, what he says to her, that were you ever this happy with me, is when Dipankar's talking to her about something uncomfortable. And I feel that this is a very important part of your connections, to have that uncomfortable conversation. And the fact that he places it in front of her, his insecurity, his vulnerability, it was a moment of trust, not like that I am insecure, I'm vulnerable, that I can't imagine that you were so happy and I didn't know about it. So I feel like, and of course this is after 20 years of being married and reading a whole lot of stuff, is that if you are not able to talk about the uncomfortable things, then you don't
have a marriage.
Yeah, and
don't.
this was the moment when he did that, and it shows in a way that they have a strong marriage because he's able to say this and she's able to receive it. And maybe she doesn't say what makes him happy, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Like you can say things and
she's honest. She's not sugarcoating it for him. She's
so
just like,
I really see this as a strong marriage in that
yeah,
moment.
it is a very strong
know?
marriage. Yeah, it is. You know, when, you know, there's this whole thing that, you know, even our memories fade normally. It's just, you know, everything gets, I just feel that when you have a lot of grief or you've got, like, it's like what you said about trauma, those are the things that actually stay, like, almost like photographs. And when you know, if she visits her old home, firstly, it's not been redeveloped, whereas anywhere else you go, everything is just changing, right? And it still stands. And also, they just welcome you. We'll have a conversation about that off camera. And, you know, she's also welcomed into it without any question. Here, you wouldn't know, but somebody came and said, oh, I used to live in your house. I'd be like, yeah, stay outside, bro. You're not. So there's this reminder, not just of the old house, but of her old life. Like, they've opened the doors to her. And only that moment where that lady tells her that, oh, we cut down the guava tree and they've cemented it over. That sense of loss is very, like, poetic. And, you know, because people move on, things move on. And then when you come to that moment at the well, you're not expecting it. You don't know it's going to happen. And there's this whole thing that, you know, memory, like, you know, it really feels like the bottom part of the sand in the hourglass, because as it's filling, like, your life is running out. And this whole thing, like, until then it's all about her love, but you don't realize she's also revisiting grief that is quite heavy. And, like, where did that aspect come from? How did you think about it when you were thinking about creating the story?
So this is actually the part of the story that Avinash brought, like I said in the beginning. So when I looked at this holistically about revisiting your love, the well and her discomfort with it was that one of the best parts of her life was locked in along with one of the worst parts
Yeah.
of her life. And the fact that she had blocked it for so long, she blocked the good and the bad. And in the end, when you see her going back to the well and standing there, she's embraced all of it.
All of it.
So that is the final closure of her journey, where she accepts everything she's been through, her trauma and her sweetheart and her past and all of it.
She's carrying these memories, she's carrying this pain. But now, is there an implied relief that when she forgets, she'll also forget that pain? Like, is that the bittersweet truth of the dementia that she's considering? That, man, like, I'll forget all the good things, but even I will be relieved to no longer carry this with me.
But she hasn't actually carried it. She blocked it. So I actually feel that I feel that our journeys has pain and beauty. And one of the reasons why our neural pathways get blocked, and I'm just a little bit going to talk about the medical aspect of it, why trauma makes you more vulnerable to dementia is because you block it. If you deal with it, it will have a different impact. So I feel that and this is my personal view, is that one has to be able to accept and move on. This is for her a journey of acceptance. She has forgotten it all this while. She couldn't remember what happened, and she went into the house, things weren't clear.
Oh, so it's
the opposite of.
Oh, I see. So
You see?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that then. I thought that she didn't want to talk about it.
No, she had blocked it.
She has blocked it out.
Yeah,
so that she
which
doesn't
is-
have to revisit it in her mind.
Exactly. So she's unlocking all of it. So that's the interesting thing about the story, is that she's losing her memory, but she goes back and she unlocks the things she's blocked. So, it's that bittersweet kind of.
That's quite serious. The Ferris Wheel, which is everybody's like favorite scene. It is really a metaphor for zooming out and then looking at your life, because in some ways Shailja has kind of been stuck in this part of her life as well. Like, and it's when she gets stuck, there is that moment of like, this was a perfect memory in some ways. Like, this was her moment of like mental paradise. And my therapist told me once that sometimes people fixate on like a junk food memory. Okay, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, it's something that may not have had the actual depth that you ascribe to as an adult, but it was like some crush or some holiday or some minor accomplishment. And what happens is sometimes that happens at the time when you have had something painful happen to you as well. And that momentarily, it distracts you. That dopamine is distracting you from that thing. So it becomes much more important in your head. And tell me, what has Shailja been pulled to Vengurla to see actually? Is it Pradip or is it her sister? Like, what is the...
So actually, she's not gone to see either. She's gone to revisit herself. So when I was writing the story, three of us in my mind was not Pradip, Dipankar and her, was her version of herself in the past, present and the future. So...
Girl.
So she's actually gone to meet herself as a child for the last time.
I'm going to cry, Pio. Go away.
So this is what, in my mind, the story was about.
Wow. Oh, that's really so sad.
So it's like you meet and say farewell to that version who she had forgotten about. And she wants to, which is why it's... All the people are talking about her, if you remember.
Yeah.
She's meeting that version of herself from everybody's perspective, whether it's her teacher, whether it's Pradip, whether it's her house. It's her visiting herself for the last time.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about her, what a badass she was and stuff. Like, there
Exactly.
she's all like sophisticated and calm and like
Yeah.
collected, and then actually she was like a total like Daku running around Benkurla.
But you know, the lovely part of the story is that it meant different things to different people. But this is what I was writing, honestly.
I'm going to ask you, it's our last question. Is there some beauty in forgetting? Like, do you think, like we were discussing about documenting everything, we document the grand moments, we document the really everyday kachra moments, and we have no judgment anymore on what we are documenting and what memories we are holding on to. So, what is important and what isn't important in the long term in terms of memory? Like for Shelja, what would she wish that will be the last memories to go when, and what, even for us, like what is something that we need to keep in mind? I can tell you what I thought when I was watching
Please.
Three of Us. You know, it just made me very conscious of the fact that as we get older, we will remember moments as much grander than they were and much more impactful than they were. And if you can get to an old age where you remember stuff, that itself is amazing. And you know, like it's a cliche now that they say old age is a privilege. So that it really reminded me that these are your people, and these are the human beings and the relationships you have to hold on to. So what is important for you? Like, you know, you've been through your share of losing people recently.
So I want to tell you something which basically has nothing to do with this, but it'll link back to what you're saying. When I was really young, my mother told me something because I used to be this nasty little kid. I would remember everything bad everyone did to me. And I would write it down in my diary. I was just a vindictive little person. And my dad was a really problematic person because he had his own story and whatever childhood trauma. And my mother sat me down. She read my diary. First of all, Ma, if you're ever listening, that was not okay. You should not have done that. Though she still says she did the right thing. And she sat me down. This is 15-year-old me. She's like, listen, Pio. How you remember things is how you curate things. How you will remember your life is what you were choosing to remember.
Yes.
I have never forgotten what my mother said. I was obviously not understanding anything. She's like, you have written down every single bad thing that has happened to you. Are you trying to tell me that nothing good has happened to you? So memory, in a way, is your curation of your life.
Yes.
And everything you remember is going to add up to what you feel about yourself. So curate your memories carefully, because it can be the difference between you being a sad, bitter, angry person and you feeling like you've lived a fulfilled life. Because good things and bad things happen to everyone. So thank you,
a
Ma.
vindictive little person writing a shit
Oh
list.
my God, if my mother had not read my diary, I would be a dick.
So she was right. Say that. Say thank you, Peel's
Thank you,
mom.
Ma.
Okay, we've come to the end of it.
Oh,
Thank
no.
you very much.
Can we just talk for an hour more?
And you know, I really love the film, and more power to you. Please write more stories.
I
Lots of
want
movies.
to.
Put her
I
movies
hope
on
so.
screen.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to The Swaddle. They're the best podcast in town. I added my own thing.